welcome to another episode of Pivot and Prosper. I'm your host, Joe Nahay from LFG Business Group. This is a podcast where we speak with entrepreneurs, business owners, and C-suite executives to hear about their stories of growth with relentless perseverance. Today, I have the great joy of introducing Laura Brooks from St. Louis, Missouri. She's a go-to market strategist and a fractional CMO for mid-sized CPG companies. Her expertise is in omni-channel strategy, bridging e-com and in-store channel strategies through marketing integration. Laura, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me here today.
Great to be here, Joe. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Now, just like many people I bring on, it's usually some of the best bits before I press record of getting to know you and learning about what you do and the struggles of going from maybe a corporate life into growing a business and all of the above, right? So let's kind of get kicked off and learn about you as we kind of pivot deeper into the podcast, right? Tell me about your current role, what problem your business solves, and ultimately what you've created as the uniqueness and the solution.
Perfect. Well, to set up the stage for the problem and the solution, let me give you a little bit about my background because that's how I found what I do today. So I got my training at big CPG, Fortune 500 company of Clorox in marketing. Amazing training ground. I was able to focus across multiple disciplines from brand marketing to shopper to insights analytics, innovation, and everything in between. So I got truly that generalist marketing background. I then got my first taste of entrepreneurship when I went to private equity backed companies. I was a part of both Angie's Boom Chicka Pop and Solid Gold Pet through acquisition. So I got to see that chaos of coming in, huge, big, lofty goals. No longer were we celebrating a 0.1% growth rate. We were talking double digit growth. And it was a wild ride, absolutely fun. And that's when I realized I love entrepreneurship. So I went to true startup world, pre-revenue and incubator. I was CEO and co-founder of a supplements company, and I was able to see it from concept to launch nationally and very fun. But that's when I realized, these small companies, they have so much passion and there's so much energy there, but what they lack is that focus that I was getting when I was in big corporate world. And so I realized that this is the problem, is that you don't want to squash that passion from those founders, but you do need somebody to block and tackle and help set that direction. You need to slow down and build that strong foundation so ultimately you can scale faster and more efficiently. And that's how Foundation Collective was born. So I partnered with Nicole Heath, my business partner, both of us, the generalists in marketing, and our goal is to lay that strong marketing foundation ultimately so companies can scale faster and more efficiently.
I love it. I think there's, that's that understanding and telling the CEO and the chief individuals of that company, slow down, relax. It's let's look around a little bit. Let's create a roadmap, a strategy behind this here. One thing you brought up earlier too, which I'm sure we'll talk about, the fishtailing, right? Of panicking. We need to do this. Let's relax. Let's map it out, and let's build a strategy behind it. And then ultimately that's the go-to market strategy, right? The new and improved version.
Absolutely.
Which is fantastic. CPG, an area where I think it's extremely difficult for companies to grow. It's a very tough one, especially in specific refrigerated products, and we can go on and on about that, right? A very risky one, but when done properly, you've been able to prove that it can be done successful and with the right team behind it, and you and leading a team, let's say, and growing that with the right strategy, it can be one that drives into 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 figure companies, if that need be, right? So tell me about let's see here. Tell me about what you've struggled with most while operating in your current role, maybe working with other people or growing your business.
Awesome. Yeah. We have many of those, but what I'd say it all comes down to really one core concept, and that's that focus and prioritization. When you think about entrepreneurship world, there are so many opinions that come at you, especially in marketing. Everyone's marketed to you. Therefore, everyone has a marketing opinion. Is it right? Sometimes, but not always. And so the focus that I'm there to set starts to creep out and scope creep starts to happen. As a generalist, I'm across all of the disciplines. As a C-level expert, I am also needing to pivot with the needs of the business. And so my challenge is to make sure that I'm influencing, whether that is the founder, the CEO, the board, the investors, I'm influencing them to ensure that we are able to stay focused on that ultimate goal, prioritizing on where we should focus our time, our energy, our resources, and the employees in order to beat that overall goal that we're trying to set. Of course, there's going to be pivoting. You should pivot. You should not put a stake in the ground and do that and only that. But you do need to have that line of sight of when should I be pivoting and when should I say yes? When should I say no? I'm a yes person. I love to say yes to things. I love to try new things, try to figure it out. It's my nature. I have bias for action, but you can't say yes to everything or you spread yourselves too thin. Not only me, but also the employees, the resources, the time, the money. It's limited. And so I'd say scope creep is definitely the biggest challenge of a fractional CMO.
Earlier, we talked a good bit about the failure rate of CPG companies, startups getting involved, and maybe a key thing that they're missing in the industry, or they think they've got it covered, or maybe they didn't come from a CPG company. They came from another marketing company that was successful. They implemented the same tactics into the CPG company, and it was chaos, right? If only they had someone like you to help guide them and build that go-to-market strategy. So what do you think or what percent do you think potentially, and I'm not going to hold you to it, do you think are CPG companies fail after a few years? And what is the main reason why they fail?
I would say roughly 50% of them probably
Right,
fail in those first few years, but I think 75% of them honestly should call it quits. It's interesting because entrepreneurs, because of that passion, they're willing to take out a second mortgage. They're willing to take out these huge loans and they're not seeing some of the writing on the wall of where they need to either pull back or ultimately close or sometimes even pivot. And so I'd say probably about 50% of them you see that decline and fail, but they hold on for too long. And probably more like 75% of them should be calling it quits. I'd say the workaround to be able to increase that rate is really, again, that focus and prioritization. I define failure as something that you can't rebound from. You didn't learn. If something went down and you didn't meet your KPIs, your objectives, your goals, whatever you want to call them, but you learned something from it, to me, that's not a failure. A failure is when you didn't know what you didn't know and you kept going without learning, without listening to others, and without trusting your gut.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. Yeah, we're all going to fail to define failure. We're all going to hit points of dips, if you will, where we've
Yes.
or roadblocks or unique milestones where it's going to be a challenge and it's going to be there's big risk mitigation involved, et cetera, and there may be some errors involved. But geez, at the end of the day, you learn from those, you literally pivot from those, and if you don't pivot from those, you keep going down that path. What's that going to do? Well, tank you. Very well could.
Absolutely.
Eventually it will.
Yes, absolutely.
What would you say are some of the key skills or bits of knowledge that are most important for success in this industry in the next few years?
Gosh, the nature of just fractional CMO work, as well as being an entrepreneur, is identifying those trends. And trends are constantly evolving. I feel like I'm going to be old by saying this, but when I first started in marketing, consumer packaged goods like household commodities weren't even sold online. And now I could be out walking the dog and from my phone order household cleaner and it will be at my house before I even get home. And so things have changed and evolved so much. And it is critical from a CMO perspective to stay up to date with those trends. But more importantly, the skill set is to identify what of those new trends are a complete distraction. They're just a shiny penny, put the blinders on, don't focus on it, and what does actually fit the business plan and how. If it does fit the business plan, what needs to give in order to continue that focus and give it the best fighting chance. So I'd say staying up with the trends, but more importantly, identifying what's a distraction and what actually fits the plan.
I love it. I think we're in a time now where I mean, every 3 months, even 2 months, 1 month, the trends or how people are adapting to, AI is a big topic on here as well, of how people are being connected to what's being shoved down their throat through ads that are targeted, and even the feeling of, do I want to find this product on my own, or I want it to be shoved down my throat, and then I go and I bought it because I felt like it was snake oil through like tons of ads that were targeted to me to buy something. Or is it, this day and age now where people want to relate to a product, or well, more to a brand than anything? What is the emotional feeling you have when you see that brand? What kind of triggers does it have? Does it give back to a community or to a nonprofit or all those
Mhm.
things, right? Do you feel like you're doing something good behind it? And there's gosh, there's so many areas in there, and you can have all those components, and it still, if it's shoved down someone's throat, it's like, no, I want to. People like that. I talked with someone recently, and they said, you know, when you find a new restaurant, a hidden gem, right, it's like, oh, the feeling. I found it. I found that hidden gem. And then many times, if there's something, a new restaurant being shoved down your throat that everyone's going to, it's like, well, everyone's buying this. It's not something unique. The uniqueness of finding it and buying it right away is gone versus you found it on your own and now you want to buy all of it, right? But
Yes.
every brand's different. And that path of discovering what that methodology is and how to connect with your audience, and hey, that how should I word it? The workshops, I guess, with the company and understanding their future vision, the why, all of the above, right? This is all common discussion stuff, but a lot of things that companies totally miss, and then just go full speed in different directions, bouncing off the wall.
Yes. Yeah. And I'd say more importantly, they need to decide what is something that a consumer is willing to pay for and what's table stakes these days. Because you brought up like sustainability and brands like personification, like this brand shows my values. And if you think about it, sustainability is a huge one these days, especially with Gen Z. But it's table stakes. Like they're not going to pay more because this package is recyclable and this one is not. They're just assuming this is plastic, it should be recyclable. And so I think it's important for companies to understand of these bells and whistles and whatnot that they're looking at. What is something that truly adds value the consumer will pay for, and what is now inherent table stakes to even give you in the consideration set?
I love it. Very well said. Very well said. Now, next question I have here, a piece of outdated advice that entrepreneurs should stop following immediately. I'm sure there's a lot out there, but what do you think is a big one, or one, two, three in a row, if need be?
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm hoping this is now outdated advice, but the notion that you have to work 60 to 100 hours as an entrepreneur to be successful. Hustle culture has been a badge of honor. It is showing that you're busy and the hours that you're working. I mean, it's for somebody like, I just put in a 14-hour day. I didn't eat lunch. I'm working 7 days. And while they're saying it with commiserate with me, it is that badge of honor. And I'm so hopeful that advice that you have to do that has been gone. To me, it's to be more efficient. And that seems to be
No?
the theme. It's prioritization. It is that focus. It is that staying grounded. To me, that's the better sign when we start talking about I'd say it's probably not outdated because I have heard from some other startups that they've been told you must be putting in 80-hour work weeks. If not, you're getting a pay cut or you need to leave the company. And to me, we could work 24/7. Like if we were superhuman and didn't need to sleep or eat or anything else, and we could just work 24/7, there still would not be enough time. The to-do list just keeps going because with that much time, you just keep adding on. You get that scope creep we were just talking about. And so I would say hustle culture, you do not need it to be successful. Instead, you need to surround yourself with people who are smarter than you. You need to lean into your strengths and outsource your weaknesses. And then you need to stay focused to work efficiently. That is a better sign for success for entrepreneurs.
I think I so many times, as marketers, we have a good vision of product development, sales side, obviously the marketing end. Are we finance, accounting experts? Not even close, but I need to hire someone to do these things, right? And it's easy in the beginning to be like, oh, well, I'll just do everything myself and then just take, 91% profit margin that goes right to my bank. But at that
Yes.
point, it's like, well, and I've fallen into this too, or I just get swamped and there's like burnout, right? Where I'm doing
Yes.
so much and okay, I need to leverage. How can I exchange my time for experts that I could put in place that could give me back more time to get more clients to build up, so that way they can keep growing and the quality of my business continues to scale, so on and so forth. And it's extremely difficult to, I've struggled with it a lot to get past that. I want to be involved. I want to help. I want to make this, I'm here to help type of deal. It's my face on it, the reputation behind it, et cetera. But yeah, I think trust is a big one too. Putting trust in the right people, and knowing that if you have those right people in place, that you will then get to your most valuable asset back, which is your time, which you can do to improve and grow your company. But totally agree
Absolutely.
with what you said there, 100%.
Yes. Yeah. And I would say the most dangerous thing that an entrepreneur or a C-level employee could do is to not know what you don't know. Somebody who truly thinks they know everything and isn't trying to outsource the experts or listen to other opinions or reframe their thinking, to me, that is more dangerous. Like, it is actually a sign of strength if you know where your weaknesses are and you can just raise your hand and flat out say, I don't know, but we'll go figure it out.
And this is an area of what we call it, like mini failures, if you will. But I think a lot of people go through those phases, and eventually, as you learn more from it, then you get to that point of, this makes sense. Okay, I know how to continue to grow. And then, hey, if you keep growing from there, that's the ultimate win. Predictions for the future in your industry and how you as a marketer or as CPG companies can stay ahead of the curve. What do you think?
Absolutely. I think that these fractional roles, whether it is a fractional CMO, a fractional operator, or just some kind of consultant coming in to lay that groundwork, I think we're going to see more of this. There's a lot of value in somebody coming in to observe all of the different pieces to block and tackle for the person who has the most passion, whether it's that founder or CEO, to really help steer that strategic direction. I think there's going to be more of us in the future. And if we think about too, from the industry perspective, e-commerce has enabled companies to launch and scale more than ever before. There's so many companies that can just have, $5,000 in their back pocket to launch a business that suddenly starts to grow and scale. But the interesting thing there is the person who's leading the charge to get to that first 0 to 1 million is very different than the person who's going to scale from 1 million to 10 million, who is a very different skill set, who's going to get you from 10 to 50 and then 50 and beyond. So all these different skill sets, I think, require having these fractional resources in so that you can rely on the expertise, not only for the industry, not only for the capabilities, but also for the life stage of that company, and also can help you reduce that liability of, oh no, I hired somebody full time that's now going to be with us for 10 years, or I have to fire them if their skill set doesn't match. With that fractional role, as long as you set those expectations and you have mutual trust, I can then join the company, get it from point A to point B, fulfill the contract, and then help set you up for success for that next level. I think you're going to start to see more people doing that. I also think you're going to see people, again, still starting online because it's a way to get fast proof of concept, but we're seeing a resurgence for in-store too, across all of the different categories in CPG. Thanks, Gen Z, you're starting to go back to the stores. It's critically important. And so I think we're also going to see that shift in mindset of, yes, launch with e-commerce, but make sure you have line of sight for retail launch, not in year one, usually not in year two, but perhaps year 3 to 5, we'll start to see more companies attack that in-store model.
I love it. Now, while you're saying that, that got me thinking here. If which stage do you feel is the most? Now I know you work with mid-sized companies, but if let's just say you work with everyone from startup to massive, enterprise, what phase do you find most enjoyable for yourself? Whether it's let's say you're getting paid the same no matter where you're at, right? Let's say it's a startup phase, first getting going. You hit first milestone is $1 million. That's a different phase. From there, maybe it's 10 up to 50. Then you're over 100. Then you're larger right there. And all of them have different actions of where you can pivot, move. You have to have a good product to get to those levels, right? But which do you find most enjoyable, the most fun?
Such a good question. I would say that 20 to $50 million range, once you have that proof of concept, clearly a large proof of concept, but you have the insights of, yes, that I have a strong repeat rate. Yes, I'm able to advertise and get a CAC. I have a path to profitability. I identified this subset of retailers. There's still room for expansion. We haven't hit our tip top by any means, but we have enough insights and momentum to start building an actionable plan to hit those high growth rates. To me, that is the craziest, but also the most exciting. It is kind of like you're in a do or die type of area because you're usually not going to sell your company when you're in that $20 million range. You want to scale a little bit more than that. So you need to make or break it. You need to make sure that you're testing, you're paying attention, you are getting that momentum and the insights along the way. Usually happens in that 20 to $50 million range. You're starting to get your feet under you. You know what you're doing, but there's still such a big goal in front of you. That's motivating to me. Of course, I love the big company where you truly have a 9 to 5 and can check out. There's a different reason you love that, but the thrill of these 20 to 50 getting to that exit around that $100 million range, I think that's the most exciting stage.
This also paints another picture in my head here too. I I'm sure if you and I got in front and watched 3 hours of Shark Tank with service products, which I love being behind, or consumer product goods, I love picking it apart. Like, no, why did you do that? Or what's this? Granted, I'm not in their feet and coulda, woulda, shoulda, right? But
Yeah.
I'm sure with a lot of those, like that CPG brands, they get started, they start getting success, they get growing, and then many times I'm watching the show, and I'm like, gee, wow, that was bad for them to hit this, or they're, many times they say you got to do rapid speed growth here to find where that failure point is, and then understand where you can pivot from there, or you have to just take it slow. People, as you mentioned before, the fish tailing component, right? I need to go green on this, or I need to go in store for this, or I'm trying to sell worldwide for this. I'm trying to partner with these people, or I'm doing, gosh, it could go all over the place, causing distractions, and well, ultimately, what would that potentially lead to failure?
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
confusion, lots of confusion for sure.
Lots of confusion, lots of shiny pennies, lots of holding your breath. You know that feeling when you have too many balls in the air and you're like trying to catch them and all you're doing is keeping them afloat. You're like holding your breath of, I've got the
Hmm.
influencers, I've got the celebrity, I've got the partnership, I've got the philanthropy, I've got the innovation, I've got this, and this. And you're like, but none of them you're doing well. You're just keeping them afloat. And I agree with you. You watch Shark Tank and you're like, you're operating like a big company and you're a team of three. And that's where that focus comes back. Everything to me just comes back to that focus piece of it. And with an entrepreneur, I think the theme goes across SaaS companies, it goes across CPG, regardless of what it is. It's find out what you're good at and stick to it.
When it comes to CPG, what products, two-part question, what products or category do you think is growing the fastest in its vertical right now? And then what category was of products maybe was popular years ago, a throwback, and now is suddenly just ramping back up and people want it? Any two
Ooh,
types of categories that you can
okay.
think of in there?
Yes, the one that comes to mind that is emerging and finally taking off is women's health. I mean, we're seeing women's health has been around, but it's been such a taboo topic. Who knows why? 50% of the population are females. And like if you think about menopause, that used to be such a naughty word. People wouldn't say it, yet you reach a certain age, it's inevitable. And now we're seeing these companies that are loud and proud and getting in front of all the audiences with whether it's supplements or lifestyle, education, tracking. I mean, I have my Aura ring and they have a whole women's health initiative. To me, that is finally the resurgence and it is across all the categories. If I had to choose one in the women's health, I would say the supplements. And we're seeing it go mainstream. Once Whole Foods took wild supplements, I thought that was huge for the whole category because now we're
Mm.
seeing something that felt clinical and was D2C only is now mainstream and I can pick it up on my routine shopping trip. So that I'd say is the new and up and coming. I'd say the resurgence. That's a great question. And, I'm going to go with pet. Of course, pet has always
Mm.
been there. But the interesting thing about pet is that innovation is about 5 to 10 years behind human trends. It just takes that long until it can get to pet. And, understandably, in some cases, you need to study in the ingredients. They need to be FDA and AFCO approved and whatnot. But we're starting to see in the last 5 years or so this focus on true innovation. It's beyond the brown and round kibble. We're starting to see fresh, we're starting to see raw, freeze dried, frozen, refrigerated, straight to the door in the retailer. And so I think it's never been a sleepy category in terms of we have pets, our pets always need to eat, we're always going to buy it. But the innovation and the excitement and the competition now amongst the different companies popping up, to me, that is really exciting.
Hmm. Interesting. Interesting. There's a lot out there, and I mean, ultimately,
Yeah.
what do each of these do? They solve a problem, and maybe it was solving a problem, but now in a new, innovative way that technology has gotten involved, potentially, right? Um, Another question here I'm curious of. Let's just say you had a number of investors come to you, and you've got a boatload of money to start your own CPG company. What vertical would it be in? What is there? And if I have to remove it and sign an NDA, I will. But I'm really curious. What do you think is something that would be like? I've been thinking about this, and this is something that would blow up.
I go back to the women's health. I think there's still so much untapped
Okay.
potential. there. And I really think that it's more of the not problem solution, but the consistent support. And that's what we're missing. And I
Mm.
don't want it to be in form of a functional bar, a functional beverage. I think all of those are absolutely undone, but some kind of women's health lifestyle that helps me be the best that I can be versus that problem solution. I think that, you look at just clinical studies, and I would never do a clinical company, but you look at that, and a lot of the studies in general, like just in general, like cold and flu, et cetera, are done with men. And so I think that now that we're starting to understand more about, you know what, women should have been a part of this survey as well. I think we're going to start to learn even more. And from there, we're going to uncover more that can be CPG, can be mass market, consumer friendly, that can help support females just in optimal health, optimal everyday health.
Well, this aligns with I'm going to have to start asking my wife questions about, what are things that you're missing or want to see in the industry. So, hey, anything to kind of just keep me thinking and keep the gears turning to keep me fresh in the industry as a whole, I think is valuable. Now, one of my favorite questions here, and why I love doing these podcasts, I learn something from everyone each and every time, especially from you here. The education in this space has been great. So, talk to me about if you were given the opportunity to provide or to mentor a young entrepreneur. Maybe it's even you years ago, getting out of high school or in high school, potentially, right? And you could give them one or two pieces of advice for the future. What would that be and why?
The advice I would give any entrepreneur would be to measure monthly, pivot quarterly. And of course, the time frame may change, but it's pithier and easier to remember monthly, quarterly. But the impetus behind that is it gets at that focus piece we've been talking about. It gets at the prioritization. It gets at accountability, and it prevents that thrashing. And if you're measuring, you set your goals. So what are you trying to achieve? How are you going to achieve it? How are you going to measure it? There, you just did focus. Now you're going to actually measure it, let's say monthly if it's marketing. And the reason I say measure it monthly is so you have a pulse. You understand what's going on. Are things going up and optimizing? Are they starting to tank? But you're not pivoting because AI has done such a great job now of optimizing the algorithm, optimizing creative targeting, etc. If you pivot too soon, you lose all that goodness. You actually don't learn anything from it and you just wasted your money. It drives me crazy when somebody leaves a program in for 2 weeks and we're like, oh, well, it's not performing. Like, well, did you spend enough? Did you actually get an insight behind it? No, you painfully let it sit. So if you pivot quarterly, you measure it monthly, and you could say, well, if it's Amazon sales, you learn faster. So maybe it's measure weekly, pivot monthly, but in general, let programs sit so you have that focus, you have the prioritization, measure it so you have that accountability, focus, and then make your decision where you need to pivot to prevent that fishtail thrashing of all those different shiny pennies or that uncomfortable, I need to do more. No, stick to your guns.
Very, very well said. And I couldn't agree more. I'm going to write down these bits and pieces right here as well, too, to reflect on. But I think those are wise words of wisdom that I think everyone should kind of impart in their entrepreneurial growth or their business growth, however you want to look at it as a whole. And I think, those components there, if you stick to your guns, if you understand the direction you're going, don't stray too far from the path, or if you do understand where that pivot's going to come from and what the results are going to be, have it measurable. And the more thrashing you do, you're going to end up all over the place. It's a big mess, not only in that path, but on your journey and your finances too.
Yes,
Uh,
definitely.
very well said. Well, Laura, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to speak with me here today. It has been an absolute pleasure. I learned a ton. I hope everyone listening and watching as well has learned a lot too. I'm going to link your company below in the description below, as well as a link to your LinkedIn so people can follow you and connect with you. But other than that, again, thank you so much for your time, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Joe. Take care.